What's up, everybody? This podcast is brought to you by Atlas Technology Solutions. We provide professional IT support and training for your business. We do Mac, Windows, networks, servers, cybersecurity, compliance, cloud. We do it all. We offer proactive support and consulting to help your company with the ever-growing demands that technology brings. Contact us today on any of the usual platforms, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, or at our website, atlascarolina.com, to get support today. Hey everybody, and welcome to Overcoming Average. Today joining us, we have Dr. Rick Stewart and Rob Condon, both good friends of mine. So I want to kind of give a backstory on why we're here. It's now, late February. It's a leap day, in fact. I don't know when this is going to get released, but today's the 29th of February. But a couple of months ago, we talked about getting a few guys together to sort of challenge each other, do something to sort of better each other, kind of a New Year's resolution for me, but it wasn't really, I don't like to make New Year's resolutions. I just like to make goals. So Rick and I started talking about, what could we do where we could get several guys in our stage of life, which is young kids and jobs and stuff, together to challenge each other or to do something to sort of overcome average, as it were. But it's difficult, and for me especially, I've noticed, like, in this stage of life, it's hard to even get together with friends on a regular basis or do anything on a regular basis. Running a business and taking kids to school and trying to be a good dad and a good husband, and that it can be a challenge. So what we kind of decided on was, let's just do a book study, and we'll pick a book that's helpful and hopefully does some good for our lives or as an encouragement or something. And we'll read the book together and then discuss it. And then we decided it might be fun to sort of do the podcast and during the discussions and talk about some of the highlights of that. So that's why we're here. So we picked Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life. I've read it twice now. This will be my third time through it. And I don't read books more than once typically, but this one caught me. And actually at dinner tonight, Rob, you asked why we listen to Jordan Peterson, Rick and I, and why we kind of picked this. And for me, I think to go back over what we talked about at dinner time, it was nice to hear somebody who's sort of like, just quite frankly, on a YouTube video would stand up for something that they believe in and not sort of back down and cower to, like, well, people are going to think differently of me. He sticks with his guns and he stays with what he believes. And, but he's also extremely, in one of the rules, he's careful with what he says. So he tries to not say something stupid that he would regret and have to come back and apologize for later. So that's sort of how we got to this point, and how we started with 12 Rules for Life. And if you're not familiar, it's a great book. I think was it bestseller for a while? I don't know.
I'm sure.
It's a great book. I do the audio book. It's a pretty. Are you guys both doing audio book, or are you doing?
I do audio. Yeah.
You're doing audio. Are you doing audio as well, Rob?
I actually have both audio and hard copy.
Have you been reading the hard copy?
I have.
Do you find it? Is it difficult, or do you like the audio better?
I find it much more difficult to read the book than to listen to the audio.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. I mean, he's from Canada. He's got a peculiar voice, but it's an interesting voice too. But yeah, totally. For me, the audiobook was good, and I've kind of polled people. I feel like it's just a personal preference. Some people, they can just focus better when they're sitting down with the book, but not me. So, the first rule is stand up straight with your shoulders back. And it's the famous chapter about the lobster and basically, like, I guess hierarchies is really what it's about. Sort of like there's a lot of debate these days whether hierarchies where they come from? Are they man-made, or is it just kind of in us? And he talks about the lobster and how even a primitive, basic animal like that will still kind of puff up and try to win a fight, versus the defeated lobster will sort of cower away and be damaged and hurt and run away from a battle. So
we have the same serotonin response to, if we win or we lose a fight, we both get a boost of positive feelings or depression. So we have the same neurochemistry as lobsters, and they have hierarchical structures in their community. So we do too, and it's just a fact of life.
Yeah. So, I find that hard to dispute. I feel like, and of course, there's hierarchies. I think some people would just say that they're maybe bad, that they were designed by men to push people down, and humans built these structures or whatever. But one thing, and I'm going to ask you guys too, like what stuck out to you in the chapters, if anything at all. I'm sure there was something, but one thing that I noted in all that, especially in chapter 1, is the idea that happiness is not the goal. And he talks about the goal is meaning, to find meaning in life.
I think that's a later chapter.
Maybe it is, but I can't remember if it was in chapter 1 or not, to be honest. But I just remember, because I listened to a lot of other podcasts.
It's Rule 7.
Rule 7.
Pursue what is meaningful, not what is expedient.
Right. Well, but not particularly. I'm talking about the difference in happiness and meaning. I guess what I'm saying is, like, there's other podcasts, other things I've read where the goal is happiness.
Yeah.
Versus in this chapter, standing up straight is not necessarily always a happy event. I think when things that come to mind are like bullying or, going into that job interview that makes you nervous, or the tough things that don't necessarily make you happy, but
it's a scary thing. Like, you're facing the world, you're taking the world on, and it's scary. Yeah. Yeah.
And I guess that's what I'm saying is, for me, that the difference in looking for happiness versus looking for meaning, especially stands out in this, where it's like a lot of this stand up straight with your shoulders back. That means a lot of things to different people, but to me, it is, like you said, like, step up to the plate, do something that's difficult. It's not necessarily going to be a happy time. It might be a fight, it might be an argument, or it might be a difficult time. But anyway, for me, that's just kind of what came to me, is like his review of bullying in particular, where he talks about in child studies, like the bullies bully more for a person who takes it and cries more. It's like they get the enjoyment out of it, so they'll bully that person again and again, versus if they stand up and kind of face it, a lot of times that bullying goes away. But so what stuck out for you guys? Or
I think when it comes to my work scenario, like, when I started my first job, I was 25. Like, a month prior, before I graduated, people thought I was a freshman in college, and I was a sixth year for grad school. And I start working a month later, everybody thought I was 30. So I went from 18 to 30 in the span of 2 months. I think just the way I try to present myself, try to be professional, just people gave me more respect just by the way I acted. So I think half of business is being able to talk to people and being professional, showing up on time, looking people in the eye, and just conducting yourself appropriately. So I think that really stood out to me. Just you gotta put yourself out there, be professional. Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny when you say that. It makes me think of the way I was parented. My parents were always look the person in the eye, shake their hand firmly. We would even practice like a good handshake. And for me, I remember those times as like I was too young to think that it was ridiculous, but I remember thinking like, oh boy, it's easy talking to Dad, but now we're at a place and it's Dad's friend, and I have to address him and look him in the eye. So, I definitely had that stuff instilled at a young age. So, do you guys have any specific stories or examples or anything else that stuck out in this chapter for you?
Yes. Rob, did you want to go? I got another one, but you could.
So what stuck out to me the most was he had some discussions about the cycle of negativity, right? I believe that was this chapter, wherein something in your life, an event, can cause you to start to go into a shell. And as you go into that shell, you get sucked more and more and more into it, and it's hard to break out. And it meant a lot to me because of, some of my own personal struggles and struggles of people that I know and I see all the time. And it's just kind of, I don't want to say he was able to simplify the concept, but, it's kind of neat to see something in words when you're trying to figure out what's going on.
Well, and I think Jordan Peterson does a good job at taking very complicated issues and not, he leaves them complicated, but he also puts a practical wrap around it that makes a lot of sense. And it's very relatable. Because it's almost hard to come up with ideas because it's such a huge concept, the standing up straight thing, that there's probably dozens and dozens of times that we've had that happen. And you're right. I've known people in the past that were both the dominant lobster and the crushed, sad lobster. You can see it on their person. It's sort of sad in a way. I mean, I've known some younger people that really, in my estimation, they haven't lived long enough to experience anything too tough, or at least, right? They're young and they're just depressed and anxious and they're scared to talk to people. And in a business environment, it's sort of like, you have to, this is your job. And they would sort of cower into their shells a little bit. So, I know for me, there's times when it's definitely difficult as well. None of us are perfect. There's times where I'm definitely like, I'm not doing that. I'm too scared to do that. And there's other times where I feel super confident. And I've also noticed there are different types of things where I'm probably more confident than I am in other types of things. Like I think we've talked before about, Rick's like a fantastic runner. So I would cower away from the opportunity to run a marathon, but Rick could probably run one right now without training. So, I think when we look at this concept, it's also interesting to talk about, well, what are we talking about? Is it business? Is it, family? I see people that as soon as you mention family, they get sort of weird about it, and it transforms, sort of their posture, I guess. Have you guys, can you think of any examples of that? And Rick, you had an example too, right?
So like what you were saying, like what I got was like, you have to just, if you're feeling down, you got to take a win and build on another win, I used to stutter when I was in high school, middle school, and I used to not even like talking on the phone. I still don't like talking on the phone, but it's like, I know this is in me, and I'm just like, man, I just got to freaking suck it up and do it. Like I know I'm trying to hide in a shell, because I was afraid to call and order a pizza. So I'm just like, man, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to hide in my shell and retreat. I'm going to do this and get a win, and then get another win and do something more. and then just building your confidence. So I've been there. Yeah.
Well, you said something that made me, reminded me that this is like a building process. Like it's not just you're faced with this one opportunity and you need to, buck up and stand up to your boss or whatever and ask for the raise or whatever, but it's a building process. And I know this is, I guess you could say it's controversial in our world today where some people would look at successful business people or successful anything and think, oh, well, they were just handed that. And in most cases it's not. I mean, I know for me, depending on the thing, I'm confident in some areas, some of them I'm not. But it's a consistency of, I don't want to go work out today, but if you go work out and you go work out again and again, and you face that day and you get up early and you go to the gym and you work out, eventually you'll be stronger. You'll be better. You'll have sort of overcome whatever that mental hurdle was. And you're, I guess, to be with the lobsters, like your shell's a little thicker. And quite literally in that lobster world, they're more dominant. They get bigger. They get more food. They mate more often. And their lives are better. Those bigger lobsters that kind of stand up and fight sometimes.
So I have another example about just having to stand up for yourself. So when I started a job, I came in at the same time with my manager, who was like my supervisor. And I felt like she started criticizing this, and this. And I felt like, man, she's really going after me. I'm like, am I going to get fired? What's going on? And she called this other senior therapist to evaluate me when I'm treating. And, the other thing, I don't know what the deal is. Rick's a great therapist. I don't know what your problem is. But she still kept going on and okay, we'd have this meeting and then a meeting after the meeting to review your progress and this and that. We got to call on this other person. So eventually I had 5 of my bosses were having a meeting oh, you're violating your practice act. You're doing this, and this. And I'm like, show me. I want specifics. So I really stood up. I got stern. I'm like, man, I'm just for a while, I was just okay, yeah. I'll do better. But then I got angry. I'm like, I'm either going to get fired today or this is going to stop. And I said, don't just tell me I need to do this better. Tell me specifically what I'm doing wrong and I'll do it. Don't just say I'm violating my practice act. Give me specifics and I'll explain myself. And she couldn't come up with anything. And then it all ended. It stopped. And then I get my performance review and I'm the greatest therapist in the world. I'm like, what the heck just happened? So, yeah, I think some people want to have, I think she wanted to be managerial. She wanted to have something to do, something to manage. And I think I was the new guy and she wanted to work on me in that way, kind of make me the little baby lobster and she'd be the big lobster. And then, but standing up for myself, I think I got everybody's respect. And
well, there's something to be said about confidence too. People for the most part, people, especially in business, I would say they want someone who's confident in themselves and what they know. And I was just talking to somebody the other day that's in a tough work situation and similar situation where they're new, they're 6 months in, and they're getting super pressured from their boss. And from what I can see on the outside, it's a similar situation. Are you going to stand up to this, or are you just going to kind of be like every other worker and we'll just have to look for a replacement? And I think that definitely happens in the enterprise and business. So, so Rob, you're in a management position. What kind of struggles did you overcome to get there? I'm sure you don't just, a lot of people think that jobs are just handed to you and, oh, I got out of college, I'm going to get that awesome job. But tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are, and you can talk about what you do a little bit as well, if you like.
So, we talk about the lobster world in the book, and that's more about physical presence, right? Whoever's the strongest wins. Well, we don't really live in that world anymore. There's no gladiator rings. We're not going and fighting for the land that we're going to live on. So a lot of the confrontation that most of us deal with is in the workplace or at home. So when it comes to the workplace, and Rick basically proved this point, is if you do your job well, you can overcome any sort of nitpicking and bullying that comes at you from above. So, I kind of have a scenario like that at work where I think some people become or want to become the alpha lobster through negativity and brute force. But you can overcome that by actually being the best at your job and truly being an alpha, not pretending to be one. When it comes to me, so you commented on what I do for what I do for work. So I work for a proprietary engineering firm. So it's all math and risk assessment. So it's you got to be good at your job. There's no skimping. There's no cutting corners. If you screw up badly, it costs a lot of people a lot of money. So we hold people accountable. But I think being in a managerial position, being an alpha is more than just puffing up your chest. It's there's other ways to be an alpha. You could be a good listener. You could be someone who picks other people up, that sort of deal. So, I mean, my own personal style is, I'll give people a long leash, but I'll help them along the way.
Yeah. And I think that's a misconception as well that I know Jordan Peterson talks about in other podcasts and other formats, talks and stuff, but where he talks about the illusion that these hierarchies are built on power, that the most powerful people are the ones at the top. But that's not the case. Like he talks about, just if you look at the hierarchies of chimpanzees, the powerful ones that walk around like they're going to beat everybody up ultimately will get ganged up on by the group and ripped to pieces. But the chimps that are community driven and help others, and they are willing to help get food and things like that, they're the ones that are the true leaders.
Yeah, the wolf pack, the alpha wolf will pin the other wolf down with his jaws on his neck, but he won't do it because I may need a hunting partner later down. So, yeah, same kind of idea.
Yeah.
I think the reason why I like you guys is that nobody's like overbearing, like, oh yeah, I'm gonna, everybody's confident with who they are, and they're not putting on airs. Just you're cool with who you are, and you're confident, and
Yeah. Same to you guys. I mean, I'm actually looking forward to the next chapter, which is surround yourself with friends who want the best for you.
Yeah.
And man, that's so rare. Like a friend is rare, I think, in the first place, but then to find one that wants the best for you, that will celebrate the good times and be there for the bad times, is so rare to find that. So the second chapter is treat yourself as if you were someone.
Do I want to pause this? I thought the bullying thing, how we should talk about how if you shouldn't, like a bully, like it's in our DNA. It's in there's going to be bullying. That's when kids get testosterone. They're trying to attract women. Like they're finally, there's girls.
Right.
I think we should, we need to train our kids to, stand up for themselves. We don't want them to slide in their go in their shell. Then they become like the school shooters or something like that. You need to, if your kids took a loss, okay, we need to get them a win, and build yourself back up.
Yeah.
Like you're afraid to talk to girls, you stutter, you need to, okay, let's practice here. Let's do this. And something.
Yeah. Well, I think going along with that, sort of the culture now of helicopter parents, and I heard a new one the other day. They call it a snowplow parent, where they basically pave the way and make it really easy for the kid. I understand that because I have 3 daughters and I want their life to be good, but the honest truth is they're going to have to go through some tough stuff. They're going to have to shake some hands, and
you're going to be weak lobster if you don't.
Yeah. They need to have those battles, and no matter how small. I know we had one of my daughters recently went over to the neighbor's house and just like took cookies, and we were like, well, where'd you get those cookies? And she pretty much stole them. So it was okay, you're going to go and apologize to the neighbor who was sitting there. And it was a big ordeal. But I just remember thinking as a dad, like, I can't let this go by, this training opportunity. There's so many of them with kids, but you're so right. I mean, we can't, this chapter's so good for so many levels of people, from parenting to our own individual selves. Definitely.
I wanted our buddy Greg to be in here. He's a assistant principal at a school, and I wanted to get his take. He's a middle school. That's when it's probably the worst. Just like I would do more, if it was me, I would do more work with the bullied kids to like, okay, what are you going to do? Like they ended up like, a lot of times he said that they'll punch the kid in the face, like the kid being bullied. But then he says, like, I totally understand what you did. I have to suspend you. But, he basically says, good job. Like,
yeah. Greg needs to come on. So, Greg, when you listen to this, you need to come to the next one. But, I talked to him about that same thing. Of course, you have to suspend the kid, but that's... It's I don't want to call it a silly rule because I don't know all the ins and outs, but yeah, I think for them it's kind of a, hey, good job for standing up for yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, I know I'm reminded of a time, just and before we hit the record button, actually, we were talking about the types of bullying. Like when I was younger, it was kind of like these big guys would put you in a chokehold in front of the girls and stuff like that. So. I know that stuff still happens, but for me, I remember talking to my parents like every time I go to this place, these guys grab me and put me in a chokehold, and my parents kind of gave me permission and said, "Well, slam them or something, do something to them, but just don't. It needs to be the end of it." I remember my parents saying, "Don't like get in a fight, but let them know like you don't do that to me." And so this kid comes up and chokes me out. And I'm like, and I just, it's not that I didn't want to fight, but I was like, I'm not here to fight. I'm just here to hang out with my friends, and they're making themselves honestly look stupid. So I throw this kid on the ground, just kind of threw him over my shoulder, and he hit the ground, and all the like middle school girls around looked at him and laughed, and it was just, he never touched me again. Yeah. But I think the more modern, kind of like I was saying, the more modern bullying, I guess, is online, which it's such a weird phenomenon because people are so brave online to leave a restaurant review or, just it's awful. Like people will say anything. And I was just reminding you guys of an app that was out. Gosh, it's probably been 6 or 7 years ago called Yik Yak, it was anonymous Twitter basically. So, and it was a radius of, I think 2 to 5 miles. So basically you could be in a school and just talk about, the kid that you didn't like or whatever, and everybody could just pile on and make fun of them, and nobody knew who was saying what. It's just terrible. So somebody bought that app. I don't know if it was Facebook or LinkedIn. Somebody big bought the app and just shut it down. But yeah, that's another monster, I think, than the classic bully in the hall.
So my daughter's name is Liberty, and kids on the school bus would go, Liberty, 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 with the jingle for Liberty Mutual or whatever. So she was like feeling bad. And I'm like, they're just saying your name is they're trying to be fun. They're not trying to be mean. But if it makes you feel bad, if you think that they're trying to be mean to you, say like, oh, you're singing my song. Like, oh, thank you. Like you're enjoying it. Once you enjoy it, they'll stop doing it. So I think outwitting the kids now, and you don't have to be violent all the time.
Right.
If you just like mentally outwit them, that would be good too.
And I think having the hopefully good teachers, good friends, good coaches, people around to go say, man, this is tough. And somebody that can listen and just give the advice of, hey, let it roll off your back. It's, that's so necessary. And I'm glad there's people like Greg and other people and the teachers, in the education that can be there because some kids, especially kids, they don't have, well, even adults, I'll go further and say even adults, they don't have anybody to talk to. They don't have a mentor. They don't have anybody to say, hey, don't let that bother you.
Yeah. So I think we're attacking the wrong problem. We're saying we can't bully, but for 300 million years or however lobsters have been around, so we still have bullying. Like
right.
Lobsters bully. Like we're not going to change our anatomy, physiology. Like it's not going to, our social, it's not going to change. It's always going to be there. I think teaching our kids how to deal with it and, okay, you took a loss here, but next time we're going to get a win. We're going to do this, this, and this to get stronger, better, change our social circles. Maybe it is, you need to, this lobster field where you get your food, and maybe you might need to go 2 miles down the road to another lobster field. It might be changing schools. I'm a big proponent of school choice because then you get to change your scenario and create a new life, a new situation. But
so what I always find interesting about bullying is understanding why certain kids are bullies and what sort of void are they trying to fill in their lives. So there are people that I remember from grade school that were bullies, and I look back now in retrospect, and they're children of divorced parents or abusive parents or absent parents. And I think a lot of it stems from, them getting beat down in an environment that we don't get to see in school. So,
absolutely.
So you have alphas who are dominating them that they can't defend themselves from. So they're trying to get out of the cycle themselves the only way they know how. And that's by bullying others to build themselves up.
Yeah.
And, if you can't figure out why, beyond the genetics of it, there's got to be circumstance and environment as well that drives their need to bully people.
Serotonin, like they say, serotonin makes you feel good. You bully somebody, you get more serotonin. So you feel bad when you get bullied, you get less serotonin. So, okay, now I'm going to be the alpha and I'm going to bully somebody. It's going to make me feel better. So it's a biological thing. So,
I think it's all about breaking the cycle too. Like somebody has to give, because gosh, there's probably an infinite number of reasons why someone would do that. I mean, and most of them probably bad parenting, if we're honest, or lack of parenting, or lack of other people to say, hey, again, in the teacher scenario, why are you doing that to that kid? Like, what do you get out of it? And if they can honestly answer those questions, they may look at it different. Like, oh yeah, that is what I'm trying to escape, and now I'm passing it on. It's about breaking the cycle. And I think, going back to what I was saying about, like with my kids, I hope to make them stronger and not just protect them all the time. Because eventually I'm not going to be there. Kim's not going to be there. to parent them and shelter them, but to teach them to be strong in the times when they need to be the strongest.
I think Jordan says you can't make your kids safe. The best thing you can do is make them strong.
Right.
So, and that's, not just physically, but mentally, emotionally, and socially. So,
yeah. So, the second chapter, treat yourself as if you were someone you're responsible for helping. So I think that perfectly sort of piggybacks off of the last one, where it's easy for us looking at the outside, like this bullied kid or this bully or whatever, or this person that needs to stand up straight with their shoulders back, that it seems easy to project it. But if we sort of flip the mirror on ourselves and say, why are we as human beings basically so, I don't know if self-loathing is the right word, but I mean, at the end of the day, the chapter talks about how humans, and Rick can speak to this in the medical field, but people will treat their dogs more accurately and more on time, whatever their medicine, than their own self. Even in the case, I think he mentions in the book of like when you have an organ transplant and you need that medicine, the anti-rejection drugs, and people still won't take it. It just blows my mind to hear those statistics. But then I think about myself and I think, well, there's a lot of areas in my life where I need improvement on that, where I don't take good care of myself knowingly.
Yeah.
And I that's a tough one to figure out. It's like, why are we that way? I feel like humans naturally are sort of selfish. So it doesn't line up. But yes, what did you guys think about that chapter? Did anything stand out in particular?
For me, it kind of blew my mind. He's talking about like we're not taking our own medication, but we're giving our dogs, like we'll do it like 70% of the time for our dogs. We'll give it the right medication, but ourselves will only take it like 30% of the time. So and our dogs will be dead if we're dead. So if we really cared about our dogs, we would take care of ourselves. But
right.
He then starts going into like biblical stories of Genesis, and like I'm like, what is he talking about? And he goes on for like 30-40 minutes about Adam and Eve, and then they betrayed Adam betrays Eve, he throws her under the bus, and Cain and Abel killing your brother, and we're even blaming God, like you gave me this woman and she gave me the apple, it's all your fault. So he goes through all this, and it's like, this is what the culmination of our stories of this is what we believe about ourselves. This is a story of us as a society, and we're wretched people. We betray each other, we attack our brother, we reject people who love us, and he's like, are we almost suicidal? Like, we know we're wicked, but our dog's innocent. Our dogs would, rip the heart out of something when it's hungry, but it's just an innocent animal. We're, if we're sentient beings, we should be held to a higher account. But yeah, we're wretched people, and it's maybe the earth would be better off if we're not here. I think another chapter he gets into like environmentalism, where hey, maybe the earth is better off if humanity wasn't here. So that's an extension of that. But I thought ultimately it came down to what gives us meaning. We're wretched people, but we need some purpose. We need something to move on and live our lives. Otherwise, it's just better to end it right now. It's kind of nihilistic, but you ultimately need to find purpose, whether it's friendship. Like people had he said a story about two people with disabilities on the job. They both couldn't do the job unless the other person was there. So my buddy can't see, but he could use his hands, and I could use my hands, but I can't see, and they're working together or something like that to get the job done.
Well, and going back to what I mentioned about the happiness versus meaning concept, I've just noticed there's I wouldn't say it's necessarily a trend, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but there's on LinkedIn and Instagram, there's a lot of people that are like basically self-help coaches and encouragement, and they just are always online. Hey guys, hope you're having a great day out there. Let's be super positive, and that's great. It's easy to listen to. Like, it's easy to listen to the positivity. But one guy in particular talks about how happiness is the goal, and he's like, oh, you know, if it makes you happy. But I think maybe that word is not exactly right, and maybe that's not what this guy means when he's saying, you know, happiness is your goal, because meaning is so much deeper than happiness. Like we were talking about in the first chapter, like it might not make you happy to go into that job interview and have, you know, potentially awkward interview, but the long term, it'll give you meaning and a purpose, a job. It'll make you feel better, and ultimately will lead to more happiness. I'm not saying happiness is a bad thing. But I think that part of this chapter with treating ourselves properly is the lack of meaning. Like we missing the meaning of, sort of like you said, like even our dog loves us. So why would we give the dog the medicine, but not give ourselves the medicine that keeps us alive, that takes care of the dog?
Yeah.
It's a longer game than just the immediate happiness. And I think about, for me personally, there's a list of things where it's like, man, I shouldn't be skipping workout today, or I should eat healthier, or I should go to sleep earlier, or there's a variety of things where I kind of self-destruct.
Yeah.
Knowing that it's going to shorten my life, or I'm going to be foggy brained tomorrow and not be the best dad, or I'm going to be grumpy or whatever. And I'm setting myself up for potential disaster. But it feels right. You know, it's like, well, that's what I need to do for me. And it's actually the worst thing that I could do for me.
Yeah. I obviously in the past year or so, I can take that to a very personal and extreme level. And it's funny how humans are just so prone to self-destruction. And for me, it was momentary happiness that kept spiraling into bigger picture self-destruction, to the extent where it could have cost me, you know, family, friends, jobs, houses, etc. And you have to have a moment of self-realization that you have to see what you're affecting beyond yourself. And that's, I think, kind of where I came to the point where, you know, I have to help myself to help my dog. It's the same scenario. Man, it's not a dog, it's a family, it's friends, it's my life, right? So I had to take the medicine, as it were.
Yeah.
Rather than just like, well, I'm doing good enough by everyone else, I can do whatever to myself.
Yeah.
But it's not really true.
Well, I think you hit it right on the head. Like that's shows your observation of the meaning in your life. Like there's more than just that momentary happiness. There's meaning, there's people, and for me, I think understanding meaning is tough. And in fact, the other Jordan Peterson book, Maps of Meaning, it's a monster. I mean, it's a really heavy book. It's a lot harder to digest, but it does kind of break that apart. Like, why are we made that way? And where did that come from? And, I mean, he goes way, way, way back. I won't get into that because it's such a long topic. Maybe we'll talk about it at another time, but it talks about like our desire to be basically the hero. We want to be the hero. We want to be the person that comes in and like saves the day and people look up to. And that's ultimately like where the meaning is finding that meaning in your life. Rob said it perfect. Like that momentary glimpse of happiness, is not the point. The point is your family and the people around you that love you, your dog, so take the pill. And I know for me, this first couple of chapters, that's probably been the most difficult one for me is, what pill do I need to be taking? Because it's not just as simple as going to the medicine cabinet and taking the medicine. It's a thought process and like a coming to reality of where you are in your life and why do you not want to do that? Why do you not want to take the pill? I know for me, I mean, there's just example after example that I've been facing personally. And I'm totally not winning every battle, but I'm happy to say I'm taking my medicine more often than I should, or more as often as I should, hopefully. So,
reading this chapter, I noticed that like my main responsibility right now. Okay, I gotta take care of my family. I gotta make sure my kids have a roof over their head, they're taken care of, and provide a good life. And like I sold my other house and property values went up, and okay, the debt collector's not at the door. I don't have to stress anymore. Like, and then I'm like, oh man, like work kind of sucks. Like if I'm worn out, like, oh man, I'm kind of worn out. Before I would hustle, make money and be good. But now it's like, oh, it's not as fun anymore. I felt like I've been more depressed because like one of my jobs is like pretty good. So I'm not saying I'm rich or anything, but okay, I could relax on that. I don't need to stress as hard. So, but that took away one of my purpose in life. It's like, oh, I don't really have to struggle like that anymore. And I think I've been a little more depressed about it. So it's like, oh crap, I need a new purpose. What? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. My one responsibility as a father is, doing good. Okay. What's my next goal? Better family or something like that. I have to work that out. I think ultimately it's like, I think for me, it's like, why are you here? Like, who are you? Me, I think my faith comes into play there. And, I made for a purpose to glorify God. And like, then it's like, okay, how do I do that? What's the best way to do that? I think keeping that in perspective, that there is more to this life. So I think that's where I have hope and purpose.
Yeah, I think you're totally right with the financial piece. It's a really heavy one, especially maybe in America, maybe here in the States or whatever. I know as guys, like when we say provide, it means make enough money. But if we're honest about it, it is the stuff we've already been talking about, like how to parent our kids to also be great, because who cares if you have all the money in the world and your kids are a nightmare and getting into trouble. I mean, it would destroy me inside. So yeah, I think it's very wise to look at that meaning and say, okay, what is provision for your family? What is taking care of yourself? Sometimes it's health. But it also may be balance of, hey, yes, you need to make money, but also you need to go to the kids' recital. You need to, you need to do some of those things with limitation, of course, because there are,
really boring things.
There's some really boring. So, yeah, I think that's great.
What I have found in the last couple months is that you can't be complacent with what you are providing and what you're doing. So, you can have a well-paying job that provides financially, but that's not enough. I mean, it results, if you're not maximizing your potential, then you're not providing all that you can. So certainly there are people who have to work 3 jobs to make ends meet, and they probably don't have the time that they'd like to spend with their kids or doing whatever they need to do. But if someone else is working 1 job, but they're spending all of their free time selfishly on themselves, to me, that's not providing. Yeah. So you have to find that other purpose. And, it could be, for me, it's been as simple as going on bike rides, things that I wasn't doing before.
Yeah.
And it's made it brings back to the meaning. It's brought a lot more meaning to my life.
Well, and you reminded me, when we first kind of started talking about doing this book study, one of the topics that kept coming up to me was something that I've done personally for years, which is, I think Zig Ziglar made I don't know if he made it or not, but it's the Wheel of Life. And it's 7 spokes. It's personal, physical, family, mental, financial, spiritual, and career. Those are the 7 spokes of life. And the idea is essentially, if you just focus on one spoke, the wheel is going to fall apart. You're going to go flat. So if you just focus on physical and you're just, the greatest CrossFitter, the best runner or whatever, but you're losing time with your family, you're not working on your career, you're not working on your personal life, your social life, you're going to be a really fit person with no friends and family. And then the meaning is just extinguished from your life. And I see that in all of these, to be honest, as a believer, it's hard to see the spiritual one as it's rare that you see somebody that's all about the spiritual world. But I know some folks that they forego, personal, they forego career, and they get out of balance. Because I think for them, they think, well, this is the thing I need to do. I need to be a super spiritual person. And yes, you need to be spiritual, but a spiritual being also has a physical body, and you have to have a job, and you have to have family, and keep that in balance. And that's one of the things it's just difficult to, like I said at the very beginning, it's difficult with people of our age to get a bunch of dudes together to talk or even to have an evening together. But I personally make little goals in each of those spokes, and I try to maintain them throughout the year, career goals or saving money goals, with the financial piece, personal, I know, as I just have mentioned, gosh, it'll be a month or 2 will go by and it's like, man, I haven't seen Rob. And Rob's a good friend of mine. I haven't seen him in 2 months. And, that's not a good thing. Because if you're too focused on family, too focused on career, too focused on money, the wheel gets out of balance. And it's funny, as I'm talking, I'm even thinking of examples. There are some people that would say, well, you could never do enough family. You could never do enough, like I said, spirituality. But I just heard a story a few weeks ago about a guy who, even his family is out of whack. Everything is family. And it's the easiest excuse to say, well, I'm not going to be able to take that job because, I'm not going to have enough time with my family. It's okay, well, now you're broke and, you're with your family all the time, but they don't have their needs provided for because you won't go to work. And
I think half of divorces are from financial stress. So yeah, you need to be financially secure. It'll take a lot of stress off of your relationships. So yeah, you need to be financially stable. If you just work out and don't go to work, I go to CrossFit every day, and you don't go to work, then you're going to be broke. And yeah. So
when I think that the wheel, it ties into sort of that second chapter of what is the pill that you need to take? What are you not doing for yourself? And I know for me, like I personally, when I look at those goals, and I think we had this conversation a couple weeks ago, but there are certain goals in that circle I have no problem with. Every time I set a goal, some of them I'll double. There's goals and I'll say I want to do X, and I'll do X times 2, X times 2.5. But then there's other spokes where I kind of fall down and I don't, whatever it might be. So I think there is like a natural, maybe a proclivity to like some people I know, they're just good at whatever. Like you're a great runner like this. I'm not.
But I have no social skills, so I'm totally unbalanced.
So, I think balance is the key, but yeah, we probably have our natural, like, oh man, this guy's really good at finance, or this guy's good at whatever, but balance, and self-observation. Like, what do you need? What pill do you need to take in your life today?
See, I think the reason why this book and the book study is so good, and actually discussing it, talking about it, is that, okay, how am I being self-destructive? And like now, if you're able to see it in yourself, and you'll be able to see it the next time, and okay, I'm not doing that. That's so dumb. Why am I self-destructing? And then taking care of that. And like in the last chapter, like, okay, I'm a scared little crab, lobster. I need to okay, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to I'm going to get a win. I'm going to take one step forward, and just, so seeing it and then trying to change and trying to change it. Like, hey, I know this is what's going on. I'm not doing this anymore, and changing it.
Mm. Yeah. So yeah, I've been excited about doing this, and it's taken us a while. I mean, really, I guess we started talking about this maybe at the beginning of the year. It's taken 2 months to get there, but I want to challenge both of you guys to see this through, and we'll do the other 10 chapters. I guess we could do 2 at a time and then come back here and talk about them. So the next 2, I'm actually excited about these. As I mentioned earlier, befriend people who want the best for you is rule number 3. And then rule number 4 is compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not the useless person you are today. That's what somebody wrote. I don't know if that's the exact rule, but yeah, those are going to be good. I like how it's sort of, there's definitely a thread through the book of some of these. They sort of play into each other, but thanks for listening, everybody. For those who are listening and would like to join us, and I want to kind of tell a quick story on this too before we wrapped up. But it's when Rick and I kind of brought this to the table, we had a game night and we kind of threw it out to a couple guys and threw it out to some guys on the side. And it's funny how few people were interested.
Yeah, jerks.
Yeah, and I just thought that to be funny. Now, I get the podcast part, but we didn't, to be transparent, we didn't really push the podcast part. It was more, hey, are you guys interested in sort of bettering yourself and finding something we could do as guys to come alongside each other and encourage each other or whatever? And I mean, literally some guys were like, no thanks, I'm good. And I know there were a couple guys that, with the mention of a book, were like, I don't really read. So
I'm illiterate.
I'm thankful for you guys for coming. And like I said, anybody who's listening, or if you guys run into, I know hopefully we'll get Greg in here eventually. He's on the fence, but we'll get him eventually.
Yeah.
These are tough topics, but I think it's great to sit down and talk about them in a group, because you learn a lot about yourself and just people in general.
Absolutely. And as far as the podcast part goes, I know the first time I interviewed Rick, and this is now the 3rd podcast he's done with me, he said, I've got nothing to share. My life's boring. And now, I mean, he's telling stories that I'd never heard before, even now. So yeah, it's great. It's a good conversation. So thanks guys for being on, and we'll talk to you next time.